and girls. I'm putting the history videos on hold just briefly because I want to look at the bars on my Triumph Speedmaster. Triumph launched the Speedmaster in 2003. It came a year after the America had been launched, but the Speedmaster was a more laid-back, cruiser-looking bike with beach bars and a swept-back look, whereas the America was sort of a hot rod bike. In 2018, the America was suddenly gone and there was a new Speedmaster. This was definitely a Bonneville Speedmaster. It had the fabulous new 1200cc liquid-cooled engine drawn from the Bonneville range. It had uprated electronics, so you get cruise control and traction control. The new Bonneville Speedmaster had a newly designed frame with much improved forks. The fork rake, the angle they stick out at the front, was reduced hugely. The old Speedmaster had a 33.3 degree rake. It made it a little bit unwieldy, difficult to manoeuvre. But the new Speedmaster has an incredible rake really of 25.3 degrees. What is that, 8 degrees less? That's massive in fork rake terms. Reducing the rake so much means the bike handles so well. In 2021 there was another slight electronics tweak and it got this awesome and gorgeous new black and white paint job. So in 2022, well, I bought one. What was a man to do? I've got a 1200cc Bonneville parallel twin. It's got the big 47mm black forks with gaiters, monoshock frame. It's got the fat balloon tyres that I do like on a cruiser. It's just a classic, refined, handsome bike with the most handsome paint job. When I first saw the new Speedmaster in 2018, the Bonneville Speedmaster, I couldn't believe how gorgeous it looked. I thought the old one was nice, but the new one, but back in 2018, I didn't have the money, so I bought a second-hand Harley Sportster, and I loved it. But by 2022, I wanted those electronics, so I bought a Bonneville Speedmaster. And now in 2023, and many thousands of pounds later, the beach bars are gone, and yet they were a key element for me. That swept back look, that laid back ride, it just was iconic. I loved it. But when you get a bit older, you have to face up to reality, and I have age-related aches and pains, and I'm not managing. I need a more upright position. Now, to get a more upright riding position, I bought some Motone risers, the 1-inch up and over risers, and I got some Rocks extensions, 4-inch extensions as well. I've done another video about that, I won't go over it all again, but it didn't work. It was just, well, it was very sad. So I had to think of something else. And the only other option really was the high bars. Triumph do high bars, mini apes. Changing the bars has several complications. The first issue, I suppose, would be the cost. Triumph high bars, the mini apes with the risers, they come in a kit. Cost £165. I bought the black ones. I want it as weatherproof as possible. But if you put the high bars on, you've got to get the cable kit. That's £110. And according to the Triumph figures, the fitting time is about an hour and a half. So it's another £150 plus. I did ask the dealer, and he, quote, strongly advised me to get the cables installed professionally. Don't do it myself because it was very difficult, he said. This means, you're looking at £425 before you start. Another issue is that it changes the look of the bike completely. It's a whole different bike when you put high bars on. But I'm not a fan of form over function, as I've said many times before. But anyway, in this instance, comfort is king. I've got to go with whatever rides well. There are other handlebar issues, more logistics rather than cost. Triumph, they're not very aftermarket friendly. And now I'm coming from a Harley Sportster, and obviously the aftermarket is enormous for Harley Davidson, especially Sportster, but all Harley Davidsons. In theory, I suppose, you could put any bars on a Speedmaster, any bars from a Sportster even onto a Speedmaster. In theory, they're all 1-inch standard diameter, but it doesn't work. The ends where they throttle and the clutch, where they slide on, the ends of those bars on Triumphs are very long, and it means if you try and put an aftermarket bar on, the throttle slider hangs over the edge, and on the clutch side, the grip hangs over the edge of the bars, but it's not a very good way to do it, I don't think. You need the long ends to the bars, and in aftermarket there just aren't any. So you've got to go with Triumph. They supply different risers. They're what they call pinned. That means they've got little dimply bits that stick out from the risers, and it locates the bars precisely, and you can't adjust the position. They are, I think it's vertical, but it might be slightly over, and for me that's way too far forward. It doesn't help with the comfort at all. It puts strain on my lower back. It's miserable. To try and get round that, I tried to use the Motone risers that I had bought previously, and I put the high bars on with those risers, but crikey, it is so unstable. If you compare the Motone risers with the Triumph risers, they have a wider base, and they have an internal washer. I have no idea why. It holds the bars on, it holds the risers onto the top yoke, and it's more stable. I don't know how the internal washer helps that, but it does seem to. When I had the Motone risers with the ROX 4-inch extensions, the dealer refused to test ride the bike. He said it was unsafe. I don't know if it was actually unsafe, but it certainly did wobble a lot, and it still does now. Whatever it means, you've got to go with the Triumph risers. And because of the pins in the supplied risers for the high bars, I ditched the supplied high bar risers and I used the standard risers because they haven't got pins. Gives you a bit of adjustability. You can push the bars further forward or pull them further back, and that works. Stability it's suspect because they're still rubber mounted. I hate this so much. It means they wobble. It's obviously done because they want to eliminate the vibration through the handlebars, and the Speedmaster does have a vibration to it. It's not like a Harley vibration, which I liked. It was a very low sort of amplitude. It was what I would call comfortable. I like that, but the Triumph, it's much more buzzy, and I think without rubber mounted handlebars you'd get horrible pins and needles in your hands and wrists, but I presume that's why the handlebars are rubber mounted. The problem is, of course, they're not stable, they wobble. So this is the bars, and you see I'm not putting much pressure on there, that's just one finger around and you can see them moving. So when you brake, that can be a real shock, because if you're braking hard, that seems to be focusing, so you can see where it's moving. The rubber's compressing backwards and forwards, and there are bolts at the bottom, of course, you can tighten up underneath, but because it's rubber, it doesn't stop it moving. You tighten it, and I presume it squeezes it more, but it doesn't stop it, and there's no torque setting in the books or anything, so I just leave it as it is. And standard, it's ever so loose. When I undid it first, it was a real shocker. But anyway, it moves. And that's how much it moves, even slightly, and you can't do anything about it. And if you've got bigger bars or long risers, they wobble alarmingly. The bars should be solid mounted. It's ludicrous that a modern bike with modern balancers in the engine still needs a rubber mounted handlebar situation. Surely you can rubber mount the engine if it's needed, but anyway, that's not what they did. So I can pull the bars forward because you've got a bit of flexibility using the standard risers as opposed to the supplied pinned risers with the high bars. But it does create problems with the mirrors. When you pull the bars forward, the mirrors also come forward and you end up looking down at the ground by the side of the bike either side. It's useless. You can't actually push the mirrors further forward because there's a pin also on the throttle side. The swan neck on the handlebars is quite severe, and it means if you bring the bars forward and down, it's actually a very uncomfortable angle to hold the bars. It hurts your wrists, it's unpleasant and unnatural. So there's a maximum, and I've pretty much got what the maximum is. It's a logistical problem, and it's certainly difficult to sort out compared to how it would have been sorted out on my Sportster. On the Sportster, if you want to buy handlebars for a Sportster, I imagine if you counted them all up, there would be more than 1,000 different options. Aftermarket bars often are much cheaper than the official Harley bars, and you can get aftermarket cables which are definitely cheaper than Harley cables. Also, comparing it to a Sportster, the Sportster bars are much easier to fit. There are no pins to lug into holes in the bars, you can move them about. There are hundreds of risers available, all different configurations to give you height or pullback. If you compare the Triumph to the Sportster, the Speedmaster, well, there are only 3 official options. There's the standard bars, there's the high bars, the ones I've got, and there's the bars off the Triumph Bobber. There may be bars off the T100 or T120, I don't know, but the 3 options from Triumph are the only options. Nothing else will fit properly. You can put on, some Z bars or whatever you wanted to, but they have to be jerry-rigged. You can't just do them. The ends will stick out. You've got to sort out the cables. You've got to get the cable kit unless you want to reroute, which is not a good idea, I don't think. And the fixing of the Triumph bars is fiddly, and that is exasperated. That's the word, isn't it? It's exasperated by some screws that I shall also list in the description. Just about see that one. Oh, and that one. They are twist grip position sensor fixing screws. Not very exciting, in fact they're very boring. Trouble is, it says in the instructions very clearly, you take them out, you've got to throw them away. That are single use. That means when you take them out, you're not supposed to use them again, you've got to throw them away. And there's 2 of these in the throttle, or the twist grip position sensor it is. And these tiny little screws, there's 2, they're £11 each, and they're only little, 15 mils screws. They're nothing special. I asked why screws can be single use, and the screws, when they're torqued in, they stretch a little bit, so you can't torque them to the right tension the next time. But these screws, in plastic sockets, the tension the screws must be under is minimal, and yet it's single use. I don't know if you should change them every time, but anyway, I did. Another complication with the Speedmaster specifically is the pins in the risers and the twist grip. On the Triumph, I don't know if it's all Triumphs, but certainly on the Speedmaster, the pins mean it's fixed. Everything's fixed. You can't adjust the throttle side so that the mirror can be rotated around just a little bit to get a better rear view. You can't do any of that. The bars, if you use the standard high bar risers, they've got pins in. It's all rigid, and you wind up, for me, with a very uncomfortable riding position. And of course, rubber mounted handlebars, in this day and age, why on earth that is necessary, I don't know. The bars have now been changed. I've got the high bars on there, and they look alright. They do look good. Because it's a cruiser, they work. I've done, I don't know what I've done now, 600-700 miles or something, and the comfort is really good. I'm really pleased with that. They're actually slightly wider than I imagined they would be, which is comfortable in this particular case. They are very different from beach bars. Beach bars are low and sleek and pulled back. I was wondering about stability, but riding, I haven't noticed any difference, to be honest. I haven't done any serious filtering, so I can't say whether or not they make any difference there, but I don't think they would. It didn't feel like it would. General control, riding, is pretty much the same. Control, when you're pushing though, that isn't. I find that much harder with the high bars. You really notice the play in the rubber-mounted handlebars, and because it's higher, you're pushing, it seems to me, you're pushing against fresh air, whereas when it's low, you're pushing against the weight of the bike. You can lean into it, as it were. I can't do that with the high bars, but it doesn't matter. I can push it around the garage or into a parking space, whatever. It manages. It's not a problem, but it's not as easy. Overall, I wonder if high bars are an acquired taste. I don't know. I much prefer beach bars, but the high bars, they work well, and they do look alright. They work with the bike because it's a cruiser. In conclusion, you have to say the high bars, well, they are a bit expensive, and it is a bit of a faff, there's no question. Single-use screws, what's that about? And it is a huge change in style. The difference between beach bars, low and sleek, against the high bars, very, very different. You have to use the standard risers, but if you do, with the high bars, well, the comfort is good. I've had to make numerous adjustments to the backrest to get, so I've got the back support I need, but with the right support, with the bars pulled back as far as they'll go comfortably, it works really well, nice and comfortable. Is it worth it? Well, for me, yes. I need it, and it works well. It's the answer, I suppose you would say. There might be other ways to do it, but they would be more expensive. You can get bars made and possibly even custom risers made, but it starts to get very expensive then. Without going to those sort of technical complications and expenses, the high bars. If you need it, yes, it works well for me. But if you're comfortable with the beach bars, if you're possibly younger than me, I dare say, and you haven't got a bad back and so on, then I'm sure they'll be fine. You could even tweak them a little bit with the Motone risers. That would bring the pull back. Lots of people manage fine with them. So if you're comfy with the beach bars, stick with them. They are nicer looking. You've got it made if you're comfortable with the beach bars. But for me, the high bars work.